Well, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Luis Urrutia. I am a Deputy General Counsel of the IMF's Legal Department. It is a great pleasure to welcome everyone here today and our webcast audience to the launch of the IMF's Technical Assistance Report for the Nordic-Baltic region on anti-money laundering, countering the financing of terrorism. This comprehensive report, which we have published earlier today, discusses the issues of cross-border money laundering through an analysis of threats emanating from cross-border financial flows, vulnerabilities in AML-CFT risk-based supervision, and the potential impact of money laundering events on financial stability. This report is the result of a flagship project for us in many ways. First, this is our first regional technical assistance project looking at cross-border money laundering threats and AML-CFT vulnerabilities in a region with advanced AML-CFT frameworks. For that, I thank our Nordic-Baltic constituency for coming to us with this initiative and to each of the participating countries for the open discussions with the IMF team throughout the course of this project. Second, this project notably leverages the IMF's novel methodology to analyze inflows and outflows from the participating countries to understand cross-border money laundering risks in the region and use this understanding to inform our analysis of AML-CFT supervisory efforts. Finally, the report is the first of its kind to explore quantifying the impacts of money laundering events on the banking sector's stability. At this point in time, when cross-border financial crimes are a pervasive concern, our work here could represent the future of anti-money laundering efforts on these topics. We hope that the good practices and challenges identified in this report will also be useful to other countries and regions as they continue the important task of mitigating cross-border money laundering risks. The lessons we've learned from our work will certainly influence the IMF's thinking on these crucial themes. Now, I am pleased to announce that as of this afternoon, that is on Europe time, our report is now available publicly on the website of the IMF and the websites of our 8 partner countries. We have also published a short blog reflecting our broader work in this area, along with the key takeaways from the report. This is also available on the IMF website under the title Money Laundering Poses a Risk to Financial Sector Stability. Without further ado, let me turn now to this distinguished panel to further our discussion on combating cross-border money laundering, IMF's collaboration with the Nordic-Baltic region, with representatives from the Nordic-Baltic region. But before we go to the panelists, let me hand the floor to Riksbank's Deputy Governor Anna Breman for her welcome remarks.
Thank you, Luis. And I would also like to welcome you all to this virtual event. Today marks the publication of the regional report on financial flows in the Nordic-Baltic region, as well as the executive summary for each of the Nordic-Baltic countries. And in 2021, the Nordic-Baltic countries asked the IMF to conduct an assessment of AML threats and vulnerabilities in the Nordic-Baltic region. The reason for us to ask the IMF to do this was against the backdrop of a few high-profile AML cases involving financial institutions in our region. A lot of progress has been done on the regulatory frameworks, and improved supervision has occurred since that time in the Nordic-Baltic region. But this report, it let us take another step forward in strengthening this work and also to improve cross-border collaboration. And given that the region has significant cross-border banking activity, applying a regional dimension to AML issues is important. And as Luis just pointed out, this report is innovative in several dimensions. First, it is, to our knowledge, it's the first report that used a regional perspective on financial flows related to AML and CFT issues. It does use, like Luis also pointed out, technical innovations to analyze the data, the large flows of data across the countries. And also importantly for us in the region, has been a collaboration across all 8 Nordic-Baltic countries, involving the central banks, the ministries of finance, and all the supervisory agencies in all these 8 countries. And in parallel to this, we're also hosting a workshop here at the Riksbank for 3 days together with the IMF, bringing together almost 40 experts from the Nordic-Baltic region to help us further learn and discuss the findings in this report and to move forward in strengthening our collaboration. So before I hand the floor back to Louise, I would like to express my sincere gratitude and appreciation for the team at the IMF for conducting this important work. I would also like to thank David Ferelius here at the Riksbank, who has coordinated across all these countries and agencies and with the IMF. And last but not least, I'd like to give a heartfelt thank you to all the colleagues across the Nordic-Baltic region for working together for several years to make this possible. And I like to say it really shows our commitment to transparency that we have now published the whole report and the country executive summaries as well. So thank you so much for this excellent collaboration, and let's start the panel. Back to you, Louise.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for those words. Very nice to see you again. I am pleased to welcome our esteemed panelists from our 8 Nordic-Baltic partner countries. Panelists, we look forward to hearing your country's takeaways from this project and your views on the way forward in tackling cross-border money laundering. Before we get to the discussions, I will quickly introduce our panelists. From Denmark, Rikke Louise Wørum Petersen, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Deputy Director General of the Danish Financial Supervisory Authority. From Estonia, Andre Neum, member of the board of the Estonian FSA. From Finland, Samo Korri from the FSA. From Iceland, Björg Sigurgisladottir, Deputy Governor for Financial Supervision. From Latvia, Andris Strats, the Head of General Secretariat from the Bank of Latvia. From Lithuania, Simona Skrepsta, member of the board of the Bank of Lithuania, responsible for supervision. From Norway, Brita Dae Retnovika, head of the section of the Norwegian Financial Supervisory Authority at the FSA. From Sweden, Malin Alpen. Thank you very much for joining us. And let me now start with the first question with our colleagues from Denmark. To Rikke, a key message from the report that we are publishing today is that cross-border cooperation is key to effectively fighting money laundering. How do you see cooperation in the Nordic-Baltic region at this stage? And what else could be done in the coming years to strengthen it further?
Thank you, Louis. And let me just start by saying thank you to the team at the IMF for this very comprehensive report. As you stated, it is truly a flagship project that will, I think, set a new standard. And I also agree with you, Anna, that this really says something about the cooperation that we have in the Nordic-Baltic area, that we initiated this project, and also the transparency that we are willing to give to the other countries by publicizing the findings. So we are very happy for this. I would also like to say thank you to the colleagues who are represented here today for the contribution and the good discussions we've had along the way. Of course, we have been looking forward to the report, both the regional report, also the country reports, which will come shortly. But I think maybe even the process has been more valued to us than the reports in itself. Of course, we will look into the reports also and see how we can further enhance our cooperation. As the IMF has pointed out and stated in the report, we, the authorities, are constantly trying to improve our efforts in this important area. It's been a very important agenda for the last up to 10 years, I would say, in Denmark. In Denmark, both the companies and the Danish FSA have allocated many resources to this area, and there is a very firm political will and commitment to fight money laundering and terrorist financing. And I know that's the same that goes for the other countries as well. So we, of course, try and look deeper into the conclusions and recommendations of the report, and not least the data in the report, in order to find ways and means to improve our efforts. You're rightly pointing to the need for strengthened international cooperation. This is a very important point, and also why we initiated this report, actually. We are constantly improving or trying to improve the cooperation with other authorities, not least across the borders. We set up the Nordic-Baltic working group on AMLs of AML supervisors, and in that way we have actually, I think, been front runners in international cooperation. Our cooperation has indeed been deepening and improved over the years. And this is also something that we find is very important to elaborate more on in the coming years. I think the Nordic-Baltic working group really also shown its effect when we had the whole sanction bills coming up in 2022, where we were able to very smooth and agile have a lot of meetings together online, but where we could actually discuss how to go about working in this new area of sanctions, which became much more important than it had probably been for many years in many of our countries. And I really think that the group showed its worth in this situation. Besides the working group, we are all, not just Denmark, but all here today, active in participating in the supervisory colleges, in the financial task force, and the European Banking Authority, and of course also in bilateral cooperation. And I think really that this is the framework that we need to keep enhancing. So there's no doubt that we in the Nordic-Baltic region has developed a strong cooperation in the recent years, but we need to keep on enhancing that, keep on also being very aware that a cooperation like this needs strong efforts from all participant members. And I think we have it, and it's something that we really need to guard. Then, of course, in a few years' time, we will also have the new European AML authority, the AMLA, as we call it. And I find that further strengthening of the cooperation should obviously take place within this new structure, but also the existing fora I just described. We don't feel the need for creating new forums. We think we actually have a very good setup as it is right now on different levels. We shall particularly continue to deepen the cooperation in the working group, for example, by enhancing the thematic discussions and the discussions on the risk, which are across the region, because we are a very integrated region. This can be risk associated with trade-based money laundering and cryptocurrencies, which are two of the biggest issues that we see right now. Of course, we also need to exchange experiences on new methods and technology. We also think that this is a very important point that should be discussed in the Nordic-Baltic group, but we also hope that the AMLA will take a participation in this. And of course, always explore the possibilities and ways to improve and alert each other regarding emerging and increasing risks. The risk-based approach is inevitably when it comes to AML supervision, and this requires more and particularly better information on both the risk and the obliged entities. As you have always also stated in the report, we need to constantly improve the understanding of the actions and the transactions behind the figures in the report to keep up with the criminals, but also to supervise the obliged entities in this very fast-moving target situation that we are in. Therefore, we are constantly improving our risk analysis in all the authorities, and we are also exchanging views, particularly in the Nordic-Baltic group, about this topic. In the Danish FSA, we have a very comprehensive database and an analysis system which is based on regular reports from the obliged entities, and I know my colleagues have similar or almost the same system in their financial supervisory authorities. We have already considered several ways to improve the system, but we are also always keen to get to know other people's system and thereby getting new inspiration on how we can enrich the data. Also, a lot of inspiration, of course, comes from this report that you have made, and the way that you are looking at inflows and outflows and quantifying the impact on financial stabilities. And we will, of course, also look into this. And I think also very important that we will have some shared discussion in the Nordic-Baltic working group as to how we can approach this and how we can approach this not just as an individual country, but also as a region. So from the Danish side, we look very much forward to continue and develop our cooperation with our Nordic and Baltic colleagues in the years to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for those words, Rika, and for your explanation. Very clear. Let me turn now to Andre from Estonia, from the Estonian FSA. Andre, the team has greatly benefited from discussions with Estonian colleagues in your work on the analysis of financial flows. Could you give us a sense of your approach to monitoring cross-border flows, and what are your key takeaways from this collaboration with the IMF on this topic?
Thank you, Louis, and good afternoon from Estonia. Well, I mean, the fundamental basic here is that the most of the money laundering cases have some cross-border element, and this is alone underlines the importance of financial flows in AML task. And if we agree on this internationally as supervisors, it will be already a big step forward. What I mean that international cooperation here is essential because financial markets intermediaries are deeply interconnected. So the analysis of the financial flows definitely played a fundamental role here. Why? Because you just can't predict tomorrow's weather looking only clouds above your one specific country. And why not to take this IMF project as a first initiative or first step towards such a global risk assessment, the need which has been discussed and dreamed in the money laundering forums already. I believe we all have taken lessons from our high-profile cases. I mean, increase of resources, more regulations, better RBA tools, more guidance, more inspections, followed enforcement, and we have put a lot of efforts to the institutional changes, but we must not forget that money is laundered primarily on the payment systems. And what we really need as supervisors, we should increase our presence there where the money is actually laundered. So Estonian experience here, after the specific cases, our first step to reach better efficiency was to improve our financial flow monitoring tools. We made significant investments there with the help of the local central bank. We took all the payment information and created new algorithms and many new dashboards from different angles, which aim was to and is to flag anomalies so that we could react more efficiently in our daily work, because this was the most common criticism with the financial supervisors back then, how you can miss those high-risk financial flows, and expectations are much higher now comparing to the maybe 5 or 6 years ago. But putting it even broader context, I believe there are still many untapped opportunities. And with the help of new technology, I would say there is excellent potential to distinguish the unusual from usual. And the payment systems are still undervalued data warehouses to throw out such patterns and typologies. And the IMF project here is an excellent example of using an innovative tool to compare payments with economic fundamentals, for example, and in this way highlight flows that need greater attention. And this kind of information is priceless for the AML supervisors. It helps to create new risk analysis to measure sectoral risk, for example, and let alone regional cooperation element here in this project where the Nordic and Baltic banking sectors are strongly interconnected. And finally, I would like to make one point about cryptocurrency, also a bit covered in this report. And one thing is new underlying technology in innovation, but don't be blinded here. Regulators must keep their feet firmly on the ground because many traditional approaches survive even the greatest innovation. What I mean here, that the neutrality of the technology also means that the licensing and the AML rulebook must be applied to cryptocurrency companies to the same extent as traditional market players, and any arbitrage here leads to failure. That's the experience. And regarding financial flow analysis specifically, I think the blockchain technology sometimes provides even better opportunities for the AML checks than traditional approaches. But overall, about cryptocurrency, I hope the MiCA regulation will sort out these issues. Thank you, and thank you for this project there.
Thank you very much, Andre, for sharing with us your experience and your views on the way forward. Let me now turn to Finland, to Samo Kuri. Samo, the report refers to the need for country-specific understanding of high-risk jurisdictions from money laundering perspective. This is really one of the areas where many AML-CFT domestic agencies should work closely together. How do you see the future of this high-risk country analysis in Finland's supervisory activities?
Okay, thank you, Luis, for the excellent question. And first of all, let me thank the IMF and the team on behalf of the FinFSA and my other Finnish colleagues. This is a high-quality report. It's very useful to all of us to further improve our capabilities and our supervisory efforts to prevent money laundering and terrorist finance. And let me also thank for the recommendations and suggestions you have given to the whole Nordic-Baltic region and the individual countries, including, of course, Finland. As always, we'll take the IMF recommendations seriously, as we are convinced that the IMF and its reports are here to help us. But as regards to your question, the high-risk country analysis in Finland's supervisory activities, I agree that it is important to improve the efficiency of our supervisory activities with better targeting. More precisely, the high-risk country and the related product categorizing is very likely to be a prominent avenue, and of course so far already has been, and we need to study it very closely and further. And what are the next steps? It's maybe too early to say what we'll exactly do, but I can already see several different viewpoints to start. First, macro level data, as mentioned in the report, like trade, investment flows, and structural changes in the economy, and the possible outliers there should help us. And there has been several major changes in these macro indicators recently, which probably have affected both the absolute and the relative risk in several ways in the whole Nordic-Baltic region. And second, Also, we have domestic data available, like the payment data mentioned by my Danish colleague and collected by the Bank of Finland in our case, and also our own AML risk assessment data. And in addition of the domestic data, domestic cooperation, the cooperation with our colleagues like the Finnish FIU should help us in targeting high-risk countries and products. Then, of course, the next and maybe a bit more practical question is that what are the challenges in adding this payment data to different AML risk assessments and how to overcome them? First of all, I think that coming from a big picture to a more detailed one, it also means that the work becomes more difficult. So when we are talking about the national level risk assessment, I don't see many big issues there. But at supervisory level, there can be challenges, practical challenges, at least the technical capabilities, both in adding this kind of information to our risk assessments and of course be able to analyze it in a efficient way. And at entity level, there are differences, both reporting and the business models between, for example, banks, payment service providers, and items like or activities like entities like capital market service providers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samuel, for sharing this with us. Let me now turn to Iceland, to Björk Sigurgisladóttir from the Deputy Governor for Financial Supervision. I'm sorry, Björk. A key goal in our AML CFT engagements at the IMF is to build synergies between our technical assistance work and other work streams such as surveillance and financial sector assessment programs, so-called FSAPs. Could you tell us your experience coordinating with us on these two important work streams and how these projects' findings inform your AML CFT work in Iceland?
Yes, thank you, Louis, for the question. Before I answer it, I want to begin by thanking the IMF for the hard work and dedication on this project, as well as the valuable recommendation provided to the Central Bank of Iceland. It's very much appreciated. With regard to your question, if I compare the two work streams, that is the FSAP project and the technical assistant project, the FSAP project was overall more detailed than the technical assistant project. However, both work streams are extremely useful in their own way. And the main benefit of the FSAP was to gain the holistic view of the financial supervision in the central bank and receiving detailed analysis on how supervision is conducted and where there is room for improvement. The main added benefit of the technical assistant project is the detailed financial flow analysis, the conclusion drawn from it, as well as the guidance provided on how we can, to larger extent, use the information in our risk assessment and in our supervision. It was actually beneficial for us that there was some convergence between the two work streams, which ensured a consistency in the recommendation made by the IMF. To some extent, it was also helpful that we were able to use some of the same information available on how we conduct our risk-based supervision. So I would say that both work streams have provided us valuable input into the ongoing work of improving and streamlining our AML supervisory actions. However, it cannot be overlooked that going through these two work streams at the same time, as well as going through other evaluation at the same time, was quite demanding and resource intensive. However, I believe it's my opinion that the benefits far outweigh the disadvantages of this approach. In both cases, that is for the FSAP project as well as the technical assistance project, we are already using the recommendation to inform further development to a risk-based AML supervision and our supervisory framework, and this will be ongoing for the months to come. Finally, I also want to mention that we very much appreciate the level of technical assistance provided through this Nordic-Baltic project, such as the workshop that's taking place at this moment. It's a really good initial on behalf of the IMF, and any further assistance and training of this kind would be very much appreciated. So thanks again to the IMF.
Thank you, Björk. Indeed, very grateful for these words and very glad to see that the IMF can contribute to the work you carry out. Let me now turn to Andris from Latvia. Andris, the value of Latvia's cross-border payments and the associated money laundering risks have contracted sharply following the financial sector reforms in 2018. How will the findings of the project inform Latvia's approach to integrating an understanding of cross-border financial flows to enhance AML-CFT risk-based supervision?
Yeah, hi, thank you, Louis. So first, let me also join colleagues in thanking the project team for the formidable work done, and indeed it's very useful and informative, and also thank you very much for the great communication throughout the project and explaining your methods and indeed also listening to our sometimes our suggestions and our arguments. So thank you very much. To answer your question, yes, first let me take a short step back and indeed, as you mentioned, in 2018, after the Moneywall assessment, which identified serious deficiencies in the AML-CFT framework in Latvia and its application. So we run the risk, and that was a real risk to land on the so-called gray list or FATF strategic deficiencies list, and that was of course a wake-up call, and it took really a joint effort of the public authorities and of course the financial sector to really tackle those issues, and I think we managed, given the seriousness of the situation, quite well, and then in 2020 we as a result of this joint effort we didn't land on the gray list. But that was a time basically when it was about extensive emergency measures, and I'm happy, of course, that also during the project work you identified that indeed there has been substantial improvement in the AML-CFT framework in Latvia since 2018. But of course, that is not a reason to rest on the laurels now, so to say. So there is of course further work to be done, but that work is now more not that much about putting out the fire happily, but it's about really more targeted risk-based measures, and to use maybe one geoeconomic term in a slightly different meaning. Of course, we don't want to do just de-risking for our business. But we of course would rather do indeed correct control of all the AML and CFT risks in an effective manner, so that our businesses can continue to interact with the rest of the world. So rather than kind of coming to a complete de-risking, and that is of course where in particular the IMF project team's advice on the cross-border financial flows comes in particularly handy, and we had already before the project we had started already work on these issues and monitoring the cross-border financial flows, but of course it was, if I may say so, in a bit of a rudimentary stage still, and that was of course where the IMF project team indeed gave great suggestions that we will implement in our further work, and just so that it doesn't stop at this high level. So let me mention also two particular areas. So one is, of course, identification of high-risk counterpart countries, which was already mentioned, and the other one is also detection of outliers in the cross-border transactions. So those are two particular areas where we find the results of the project particularly informative and helpful, and we'll use that in our further work. So let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andris, for this very clear explanation. I now have a question for Simonas, Lithuania. Simonas, while today is a concluding event, many countries have already begun implementing some of the fund's recommendations. It would be interesting to hear Lithuania's experience and approach taken on board to address the fund's observations and the recommendations.
Thank you, Luis, for your question, and I would like to thank Ms. Breman and Mr. Forelius for their outstanding leadership in this project and open remarks. On behalf of the Lithuanian authorities, let me start off by adding all the congratulations on successfully crossing the finish line of this important project. We express our gratitude to the IMF staff for their hard work and dedication, as well as the all country teams that provided valuable feedback to the project deliverables. The joint effort has resulted in a set of comprehensive and very beneficial recommendations that will definitely reinforce both our own national ML-CFT frameworks as well as the regional resilience and cooperation. Now, Lithuania has a zero-tolerance approach to money laundering, obviously, and terrorist financing, and we have made substantial progress over the years, which has been noted by numerous international observers. And this is why we have been fully engaged in the project from the very start. Even our domestic financial market was not directly involved in the money laundering scandals over the past decade or so. The zero-tolerance approach explains our proactive stance on the project recommendations. At the Bank of Lithuania, an action plan has already been approved by our board to ensure the implementation of project findings, and work is well ongoing. For example, we are continuously building a strong ML-CFT compliance culture in our financial market by various activities, an active role of our AML Center of Excellence. We're also allocating additional resources to the ML-CFT supervision at the Bank of Lithuania, as well as following up on other relevant recommendations provided by the IMF exercise. One of the key recommendations we received on the domestic front is to ensure close cooperation among all competent authorities, and this will continue to be particularly crucial regarding the crypto sector development in Lithuania, which experienced quite rapid growth in recent years. We are very actively engaging with a current supervisor for the crypto sector, our FIU. And in response, Lithuania reacted fast without waiting for the United EU regulation to kick in. We amended our national AML-CFT regulation last year to tighten the screws on the sector. The amendments increased capital requirements for the crypto companies and additional to requirements on customer identification or more immediate connection to the Lithuanian market to avoid empty shells business model. And even though MiCA regulation is coming into force less than 18 months from today, Lithuanian competent authorities are currently developing a further set of regulatory measures on the crypto sector, such as further strengthening of market entry controls or implementing a strategy of a more risk-sensitive engagement with the risk sectors. We very much agree about our colleagues from Estonia on the level playing field, the need for that. So let me conclude with one more point on collaboration. As noted by the final report, an even closer regional coordination on ML-CFT issues could improve the Nordic-Baltic ML-CFT framework and reinforce our leading position in promoting transparency and accountability within the financial sector. And by working together and pooling resources, the Nordic-Baltic countries can establish a truly unified and coordinated ML-CFT ecosystem, which is already in place and well running. The ball will now be in our hands, but I'm certain that we are able to play the game as a very integrated Nordic-Baltic team. So I will stop here and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your words and your explanations, Simonas. Let me now turn to Norway, to Brita Dae Brenovica. Brita, the report includes several recommendations on maintaining an effective supervisory presence through data analysis and coordination with cross-border counterparts. What do you see as next steps for AML-CFT supervision in the banking sector for Norway?
Thank you, Louis. And first, I would also like to thank the IMF team for the in-depth analysis into this financial flows analysis, and to and from the Nordic-Baltic countries, and also for the collaboration we've had throughout this project. We appreciate your observations and assessment of potential improvements in the supervisory methodology. And as to your question, Louise, I think our first step would be to thoroughly analyze the results in the report. And as you know, and also as have been mentioned by several colleagues already, we have a very well-functioning forum on AML-CFT for Nordic-Baltic supervisors. And I'm sure the findings will also be discussed amongst us there. And also, as others have pointed out already, we have, since the forum was started, learned a lot from each other's supervisory methods and also tackled joint AML risks together, in my view. And we find it natural to use this forum onwards to further enhance our supervision and cooperation. I fully echo my colleagues on this point. One of the benefits with this regional assessment is that we are given quick learning points where IMF have found good practices in our neighboring countries and assesses if they are transferable to our own practices. And on the national level, we find IMF's use of available data very interesting. We already collect a lot of transaction data from the banks, both for risk assessment purposes, but also for specific supervision activities. And we will explore if our national currency registry can provide additional information to understand the sector's risk. The National Currency Register is a reporting database managed by the Norwegian tax authorities, where the sector, for example, have to report international transactions, both inflowing and outflowing. And by law, this registry can be used by us as financial supervisors for the purpose of crime prevention. And it might be interesting collaborating with other authorities in analyzing the data from the current currency registry. And a more extensive use of the registry might also lower the reporting burden of the sector, in our opinion. But these are all things we will have to look further into. We also find the results from the financial flow analysis interesting. The results have shown that there are potential geographical risks worth looking further into, especially potential risks connected to countries that are not considered high risk by the EU or the FATF. We are curious if a financial flow analysis over time will show specific unexplained trends and outliers. It would be a useful tool if it helps us catch new trends at an early stage, both on a sectorial basis and on entity level, in a way we are not already doing today. So once again, we want to thank the IMF for giving us such a thorough report with recommendations we can assess to improve our own supervision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brita, for your response. And last but not least, let me now turn to Malin from Sweden. Malin, Sweden was the first country to pilot our novel financial stability methodology. And on behalf of the team, thanks very much for volunteering to advance this work indeed. Could you give us some of your reflections on the pilot and more broadly on this financial integrity, financial stability nexus?
Yes, thank you very much. And let me start by saying that we are really grateful to the IMF for advancing this work, which we think is an important step towards enhancing the understanding of the stability aspects of financial integrity issues. And for Sweden, being the first country to pilot the financial stability methodology, has been much appreciated and valuable to us. The pilot project has provided us both with valuable insights, but also with practical experience from testing the methodology. So we are very pleased to have been part of it. And more generally, understanding the impact of financial integrity issues on financial stability has been discussed for many years due to various cases of non-compliance in this area. And it is, as we see it, a crucial topic in today's financial landscape, as it really underscores the importance of maintaining trust in financial institutions as a way to prevent crisis, but also to ensure sustainable economic growth. It has, as we are all aware, however, been a challenge globally on how to do this in practice. How do we, in a concrete way, incorporate integrity risks in the world of prudential supervision and financial stability analysis? It is not an easy task. Estimating a risk, especially a risk which is complex in a way that money laundering risk is always difficult. And there has not been a model or method for calculating the risk of money laundering. So in our view, the framework developed by the IMF to assess how and to what extent financial integrity issues affect financial institutions, the potential contagion to other financial institutions, and also contagions to the financial system more broadly, is thus something new and also very welcome. So we think that the framework really provides us with concrete tools for further analyzing the effects on integrity issues on financial stability. And we also see that there are really interesting results from the study. Indeed, it shows that there seems to be stability effects from integrity issues on equity prices, funding costs and liquidity. This is really interesting, and we look forward to these topics being further explored going forward. We had some initial concerns with the exercise, and that was that the number of case studies on actual findings, on actual financial integrity issues was limited, as the sample consisted just a few money laundering cases. And to draw conclusions when the sample is limited is of course a challenge. But we think that all this is very well recognized in the report, and we also appreciate that there are in the report suggestions for how to improve the work going forward. And we really look forward to this approach being further developed ahead. So despite these small concerns from our side, we really find the idea and concept interesting, and we look forward to it being further explored, and also for ourselves to try to understand how we will use this in our work. For example, we think that the basis for empirical studies could be further expanded to include more money laundering cases, which would then naturally mean that the impact assessment would improve. So to sum up, we are excited and also very grateful to have been part of the pilot, and it has been of great value to us. And we really think that advances have been made in the important understanding on how to understand how financial integrity issues may affect financial stability. So we will follow this with great interest going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Malin. We're very much indeed glad to see how this pilot has been growing. So we have some remaining time, and taking the advantage of having you all here, I cannot allow to spend time without raising an additional question, if I may. And I'd like to, just for a couple of you or whoever might be willing to take this question, to share your thoughts. And let me just very briefly say that we are all excited to see the single anti-money laundering authority up and running. And I'd like to know from any of you, how do you think this new authority will help efforts to address cross-border money laundering risks and strengthen risk-based supervision? So any one of you would like to take this question?
I can start probably,
yes.
If I may.
Please, Simona.
Definitely, I think we had really good reasons to agree and establish this institution in Europe. As Andrea told from Estonia, I think EML risks are very much often international risks, and patents are international. So we really need an institution which would look over national borders and coordinate analysis and then measures to prevent big risks accumulating across the region. What is more, of course, we need very unified procedures, how we treat risk, how we deal with them. And this institution could also bring that further. On the other hand, of course, we will always need regional cooperation. We can compare, for example, with the macroprudential policy side. We have a ESRB institution, which is covering the European level, but then we have additional cooperation on the Nordic-Baltic level for years, and I think that's going on in a very productive manner. So yes, AMLA is a crucial institution, and that will, I think, bring us to the next level in terms of AML risk analysis and countering the risks. At the same time, regional cooperation will be very important, and I think this project from the IMF fits very well in both of these directions.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Simonas. I see the hand from Rike also would like to intervene. So Rike, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, I might be just echoing what Simonas already have said, but just to say that we also think that the AMLA will build up experience on risk analysis methods and supervisory methods, which we as a country and as a Nordic-Baltic group will certainly benefit from. But we also have to remember that they will only do supervision on the very big companies, the very big entities in Europe. And there will still be an enormous need to cooperate within the Baltic and Nordic areas on some of our smaller but still important institutes. So I think we will certainly get some new experience and have built up new experience and risk and analysis methods, but we will still also need this group to be more open for discussion on operational issues concerning the smaller entities, which we still have a lot of already. And I think also in the emerging area of cryptocurrency, which the AMLA will not have such big a role in the beginning, it's a very important topic for us to stay on top of. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Rike, for this. So let me now conclude this excellent panel, and I'd like again to extend our thanks to our panelists from the 8 partner countries for your participation and extremely insightful interventions. It is clear that all countries here are already forging ahead to incorporate many of the good practices from this report as you work continuously to bolster the effectiveness of your AML-CFT frameworks. My main takeaway both from this discussion and the project is that tackling cross-border money laundering cannot happen in silos. Regional and more broadly international cooperation is key to mitigate these increasing financial integrity risks and mitigate potential impact on financial stability. On this note, my thanks again to the Nordic-Baltic region for coming together in this way to assess these risks, and I look forward to seeing high level of cooperation as you continue to implement the regional level recommendations in the report. As I mentioned at the beginning of today's sessions, the takeaways from this project will also benefit us at the IMF in our future work. We are currently reviewing our strategy to guide our AML-CFT engagement for the next 5 years. Many of these findings from the report, such as the ones on illicit financial flows, on vulnerabilities in AML supervision of the banking sector, emerging risks from crypto assets, and the financial integrity, financial stability nexus, will shape our proposals for the future. And certainly the IMF stands ready to work with other countries and regions on similar exercises. Combating cross-border money laundering benefits us all around the globe. Detecting and disrupting ill-gotten proceeds in one country will definitely help the global fight against financial crimes and deter the perpetrators of those crimes in the source country. Finally, to our webcast audience, thank you very much for joining us today, and happy Labor Day to our friends from the United States. We hope that you found this discussion interesting and hope you will get a chance to check out the full report and our blog on the key messages, both linked on the webcast. Thanks once again to all of you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.